Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. Today is part 3 of my debate with Jay Dyer recap. The first day, I recapped the first part of the debate, which was on Pure Act. The second day, I recapped the second part of the debate, which was on the Filioque. And today, the third part of the debate will be recapped on the Papacy. It was, the heart of the debate. I wanted to save the heart of the debate to the end. It's the most understandable aspect of it, and it's the most important, and I'll explain why as soon as I start going. It's also the one where I performed the strongest, so you'd probably want it that way if all of the premises I just read off about the nature of papacy versus filioque pure act are true, and they are. Stay tuned. It's going to be a great episode today. For anyone that didn't have the time to watch an hour and a half on the papacy, I'll do it in half the time now. I'll summarize exactly what happened, and I think it'll be well worth your time. Also, we are raffling off my notes from the debate. It was a pretty legendary head-to-head. My notes on section 1 filioque we raffled off yesterday. Same thing with my notes for Pure Act the first day, and each of these people, each of these 3 days, gets a signed copy of the Case for Patriarchy as well. So you're going to get collated notes, really used during the debates with my funny little comments, if I made any, to myself. And they're just really valuable notes, topic by topic. You get everything I used. I'm Xeroxing them before I send them off to you because they're quite important. Stay tuned. It's going to be great. And I really, really, really enjoyed this section of the debate. Okay, before going into that, the excellent show we have for you today, I also want to remind you, super chat, debate me. That's kind of what makes these shows great, is when people actually do call in and try to pick a bone. Anyway,
I think we did it like for every $10 super chat, they get a raffle ticket.
That's what it was. Yeah. So we have these raffle tickets. I'm going to still actually do the raffle for the filioque notes on camera today, and I'll do the raffle for the papacy notes on camera at the end of the show. I'll do filioque's raffle in just a second. Every $10 super chat, you get one raffle ticket. So if you do $50, you get 5 raffle tickets and increase your odds. It's a simple way to do it. And it was really cool because we got good super chats. We got good questions, good interaction. And that's really what I'm trying to cultivate on this channel anyway. We were never trying to be a ginormous channel, an enormous sized, suit everyone, have something for everyone channel. It always wanted to be my goal was always a large, medium sort of boutique channel for a certain kind of very right-wing Catholic. That's what I hope to get. And I hope to have 100,000 subscribers, because it would be nice, a comforting thought to know that there are 100,000 people like me in the English-speaking world. Maybe that's palliative notion. Maybe it's not true, but we are at 61,000 subscribers on this channel. Slow growth, but we'd like to get to 100. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed and you do like what you see, the best way to show that you are sympathetic, like-minded, is by subscribing. Now, the better way to support this channel, because we do need support, obviously it's quite a controversial outfit that I'm running here. And not controversy for its own sake, but controversy for the sake of truth, is to support me on locals. That is rulesforretrogrades.locals. If you could do even $5 or $10 a month, this really helps. This is the engine of the show. I have lost a job, I've been kicked off of Patreon, had my Patreon account taken. So support that way. Now, another way to support what I do here is, and this is timely to this past week's news, to pull your kids out of school. I've been saying this for 5 years. There's no excuse anymore for having your kids in school. I mean, public or Catholic school, because Catholic school is just public school plus one extra class. And it's all skills-based, Common Core, liberal woke nonsense. Pull your kids out. They're not safe there, as this week further solidified. And if you don't know what you're doing, we haven't even started the school year yet. It starts on Tuesday after Labor Day, the same way it's supposed to be before the communists really got a hold of it. So Tuesday is the first day of our school year co-op homeschool thing. I just videotape myself in the classroom, and you Venmo or sorry, you Skype in or Zoom in, and it's going to be amazing. So we have, I said I wanted 12 to 24 families going. It's a cheap price. It's $600 for the whole fall semester for as many kids as you have. We do sentence diagramming, Latin, and math skills, and that's really all you need in grammar school and even middle school. My high school is still going through with the girls and just augmenting with one or two things, 1 or 2 other days of the week. This is really what classical education is constituted by. $600 for as many kids as you have in your family. We just slashed the price because it's the last weekend and we have some more room that we'd like to fill out. TimothyJGordon.com. The homeschooling co-op, we don't have a fancy name for it, but we do have about 10 families in there. We have room for about 10 or 12 more. Get it today. That's what you can do. Okay. Also, never forget real estate for life. You shouldn't be in a blue state. Get to a red state. Get out of your blue state and get to one of these blood red swath of red states today. realestateforlife.org will help you do it. I know the market is not suggesting you buy, but it's a good time. It's switching over to a buyer's market, so it's about to suggest as much. realestateforlife.org. Okay, now the papacy. Why is pure act part 1 of the debate and the Filioque and the Son added to the creed, part 2 of the debate, less important than the papacy? Now, here's, and this is why it was such a dominant part of the debate for me, whereas part 2 on the Filioque was a stronger part of the debate for Jay. Here's why. Because the debate prompt was, did Jesus, read historically now, did Jesus establish the Petrine office, the papacy? And this means, in late 33 AD. Did he do that act in time, at that point in time? Because if you're a Christian, and Jesus did, as a matter of fact, establish the papacy, then it doesn't matter what happens in the late 1800s at Vatican I. I mean, nothing insane happened in the Vatican I or Vatican II periods in the 1890s or the 1960s. Nothing at all. But there is a fixation among Orthodox and Protestants and secularists with what happened at Vatican I and Vatican II, the what they call the aggrandizement of the papacy, codified, Vatican I, and a lot of stuff that you could draw from at Vatican II that is a pressure point. Every true position has pressure points, and that's all the Orthodox do, is they pick out pressure points. Well, this looks a little tense here. This looks like it needs a little explanation or massaging. Yeah, there are parts of every true philosophy ever. There are parts of Aristotelism that are pressure points that need some explanation. That doesn't make it untrue. But it doesn't matter, because if what you're debating is, and you're already talking to a believing Christian, like Jay Dyer or any Orthodox or any Protestant, and what you're debating is, did Jesus establish the papacy and the papal office as the leadership role, the supreme primatial role in the church, and let's say it's a kind of interjurisdictional role. We can add what it actually means at the time to Jesus and to the first apostles. But once you say yes, he established that, then for the Orthodox, chronologically, to argue, well, this happened in the 1870s. I think I said 1890s. In the 1870s, or in the 1960s, with Lumen Gentium 25, or with Pastor Eternus, the document from Vatican I. It's really moot, right? because they believe in Jesus. And if Jesus said the only way to do Christianity is with a pyramidal peak, a pope, then I guess if you disprove the papacy at that point, then you're disproving Christianity. You're not taking down Catholicism. Now, this is the most basic point I think I made in the debate. I think either of us made in the debate was what I returned to time and time again and adverted to with pretty much all my evidence. And it's odd that the Catholics out there get it. Even if irrespective of how strong you think my premises are in premising that the papacy, looked a lot then how it does now, that doesn't matter. It was only the Catholics that were connecting with the basic chronological point that I was making, and the Orthodox struggled to make it. It's like a demonic block in their head. If Jesus established the Petrine ministry as thus and such form of leadership in late 33 AD before he went to the cross, then every Christian must affirm it. The simple fact is that the Orthodox, the Eastern Church, affirmed it for just over 1,000 years, and then simply stopped. So I'm not trying to be overly reductive or simple now, but in a debate that people said that was 5 hours long and it was overly abstruse, let me pick out the most important single point of the whole debate that controls the Filioque and Pure Act. I'll explain why in a second. With the most overwhelming, undeniable, and simple point. The Eastern Church affirmed the papacy and stopped. And then, for a little under 1,000 years, just like Sedevacantists, just started to rebel, thumb their noses at the Pope, say, we don't have to follow you. It doesn't matter what Jesus said. It doesn't matter what Jesus established. Steph, if you're free to weigh in here, that literally the Orthodox thumb their nose at the head of the church as established by Christ. They admit he established it in some ways, and they demur in other ways now. They're still, Jay even said, he conceded that. Yeah, Jesus established that. Now we think he's more like Knights at a Round Table, the honorary head, and that we just destroyed that notion time and again. But for the first 1,054 years, they acknowledged he was much more. He was the jurisdictional, sovereign, primatial authority on earth who could excommunicate their Eastern primates and top prelates. That's overwhelming, isn't it?
I guess because with topics like this, I try to be careful because I don't want to be seen as trying to teach or anything. But I do have a question. What is their answer for why they did accept the papacy for so long, and then all of a sudden they're just no, thank you? Well,
I kept recurring to this question to Jay. He just won't answer it. I've never gotten a good answer. The implicit answer, and this is what co-involves Filioque and Pure Act, and whether it's leavened or unleavened bread, at the Eucharist and other reasonably minor issues where we're reasonably close together. The implicit answer is, like the 1958 Sedevacantists, the 1054 Sedevacantists, aka the Eastern Orthodox, have to aggrandize. They say we aggrandize the papacy in the second millennium. We'll do a side-by-side comparison. But they have to aggrandize the degree of importance of things like the quote-unquote errancy of the Catholic Church on Pure Act, natural theology, Filioque, what type of bread is used at the communion, in order to justify going into this schism, this 1,000-year schism, where they just no longer acknowledge the Pope as honorary head or as what they once did for 1,000 years as a kind of interjurisdictional boss, supreme primate on earth. First 1,000 years. On and off for these next 1,000 years, they'll still say, well, Jesus did establish him as honorary head, but we thumb our noses at him and kind of make a joke out of, how much we hate the Pope. Same as Protestants just because we disagree with Filioque. So it's the same thing that the Sedevacantists do with 1958. They make a bigger deal out of some of the pressure points at Vatican II. There are pressure points at every council. Vatican II was unique insofar as you had a lot of today's early iterations of political liberals, neoliberals at the council, Lavender Mafia types at the council, Jesuits run amok at the council. That's a little different than the other ones. But all the councils, all 21 ecumenical councils had pressure points where you could say this, even though it's right, this is a conceptual difficulty. So all the 1958 Sedes do is they aggrandize those issues, and they say, okay, therefore we talk about the Pope like Protestants. We talk about the popes as if he's not Pope. We talk about the popes as if he was never established by Jesus. That's really all that happened in 1054, and it's a simple matter of fact that Jay made several concessions. He said, no, Jesus did establish the papacy. And he never justified, well, then why in the last 1,000 years, unlike the first 1,000 years, do you just, after acknowledging him, just mock him and disobey? There's never an answer for that. It's implicitly because of these issues, but it never connects. So they don't have any kind of foundation. If Jesus established a papacy and they're believing Christians in 33 AD, it is a major problem that in 2025 AD, all they can do is point to Vatican I and Vatican II, 1900, nearly 2,000 years in, and say, well, we don't like what the church said about the papacy here, here, and here. Therefore, we're going to act as if Jesus didn't establish the papacy in 33 AD. Is there anyone that's sincerely struggling with that?
I think some of the Orthodox still are in chat struggling with that. But Elijah Yazi, a friend of the channel, is in chat right now, and he said they would say that they never accepted Vatican I's version of the papacy.
Oh, sure, but that's not what's at issue here. Because look, how you characterize I would characterize the early papacy as very similar to Vatican I papacy. There's going to be some like organic growth. I don't mean this in the Vatican II way. I just mean leadership will change some. Leadership models will change some over the course of 2,000 years. But and Jesus knew this when he turned over the keys to one guy. So it doesn't really matter if you agree that the early church model of the papacy was, whether you thought it was florid language or you thought it was a little bit more power given to a guy like Peter than was deserved, or you think maybe now it's a little bit less that's typically exercised. No one really tends to think that. All that matters is, was Peter given the keys in a way where he could intervene authoritatively in other jurisdictions and for the whole world be a universal primate in the early church? I mean, Clement of Rome in 96 AD did precisely this. He intervened authoritatively in Corinth while the Apostle John was still living. So that is a universal appellate jurisdiction right there in, 60 years after Jesus died. It's an early exercise of Roman authority. Ignatius of Antioch, 11 years later in 107 AD, calls the Roman Church the one presiding in love. Presiding means like a president over all the other bishops, in his letter to the Romans. Irenaeus insists all churches must agree with the Roman Church because of the Roman Church's, quote, preeminent authority. That's not a first among equals. That is in the year 180 AD. Preeminent authority. Cyprian of Carthage in 251 AD, before any of the first ecumenical councils, before Nicaea, in 251, he says he's clashing with Pope Stephen, but he still says Stephen and Rome have the chair of Peter and the principal church from which sacerdotal unity has arisen. So the sign of unity, meaning interjurisdictional authority, all of that. So, I mean, we could go through the three scriptures on the papacy, but they are more florid. The most florid language on the papacy are the three scriptures: Matthew 16, Luke 22, and John 21. So the debate is not whether the church has visible unity, but where that unity is concretely safeguarded. The Catholic position is Christ established the papacy as a perpetual principle of unity. And for it to be unity, I'm going to go on the attack on the Eastern Orthodox rule of faith in a second. Again, we're taking super chats if you disagree, super chats if you agree, super chats if you think you're Catholic, but you think there might be a pressure point that's a bit strong, where we're a bit weak. Hit me up, super chats today. The Orthodox often affirm primacy but deny universal jurisdiction. So I don't even know how that would work. The question is, did Christ intend a merely honorific primacy or a juridical universal one? And this is not an academic matter. That's the thing. I will be the one to admit Filioque is an academic matter. It's close. Like what's really going on there? You know, I mean, I think we agree now that they made a huge mistake with their interpretation of Filioque. They thought it meant a kind of polyarchia, that the divine essence originates with Christ as the second person as well as with the first person. Okay, that was a mistake. That's a fact. But after that, why are they still disagreeing with us once they realized around the Council of Blackernay that was an error on their part? I don't know. And is there a difference between hypostatic procession and energetic procession? I don't know. It doesn't seem like much of one. But that, you know, if you're interested in that, that's a pretty small matter. You can look into it. But on the papacy, I'm positive. I am positive. I mean, it's just as an attorney who understands how civil procedure works, you know, this is a civil procedure matter. And Civ Pro, as we call it in law school, is a matter of, there are two ways that like a state court jurisdiction can get bumped to a federal jurisdiction. It's either you have plurality jurisdiction, meaning if there's two actors from two different states and there's a question of well, which state court would you go to, you have a plurality jurisdiction and it gets bumped to federal courts. Or if it's a fundamentally federal question, there's some matters that can be adjudicated that are just fundamentally federal, that gets bumped from state to federal. So what we're asking about is the civil procedure here in Christianity. And the nice part is that it's not so much academic as we're just looking at history. In the early church, long before you have Clement, Ignatius, Irenaeus, Cyprian of Carthage, in the first 250 years of the church, even in the quiet period, the underground period of the church, when you know, we were getting our heads cut off as Christians, and so we just had to have mass underground. Christianity was very illegal in the Roman Empire, and the bishops couldn't really even correspond openly with one another. Well, there was still all this patristic testimony then, and a pope exercising universal jurisdiction then. It's not academic. But then at the first ecumenical councils that we agree about, it becomes even more obvious. It becomes literally even more obvious. At the Council of Nicaea, the first ecumenical council in 325, there's an appellate jurisdiction there. Well, it's implied. It grounds Alexandria and its authority by appealing to Rome's custom as the standard. Rome isn't local to Alexandria. It is an established faraway authority, and this means primacy, not equality. When they're appealing to Rome. In Canon 6, it presupposes Roman primacy. The Orthodox totally missed the point on this one. They'll cite Canon 6 and they're like, well, they're talking about Alexandria and Antioch. Yeah, but why would they mention Rome? Because Rome is the city on the hill in the church. Also, everyone always misses this at the Council of Nicaea. The four marks of the church, one Holy Catholic Apostolic, which Orthodox don't even pretend to have. They just are silent, button the lips on how are they one Holy Catholic and Apostolic, required of being the true Christian church at Nicaea. Those four marks, Everyone there said, well, to be one, you have to have a visible head of the church, a visible sign of unity, a universal jurisdiction of the Pope. Everyone assumed that. And the reason they could assume that is because it goes all the way back to the beginning, to like the third or fourth Pope, Clement of Alexandria, or Clement of Rome, sorry, where he did exercise this. So no one thought it would get brought up 1,000 years later. Same as no one assumed sola scriptura would be this weird thing for this Christian-ish book called Protestantism like 1,500 years later. No one ever assumed after Clement of Rome had intervened authoritatively in Corinth that it would ever become academic. But there's only one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, and it's called the Catholic Church. The oneness really just ends the debate. And I wouldn't lean on that as much in a debate. But there's not even a pretext to being one church. In the Catholic Church, as much as there have been bad popes, there have been funky attempts to change dogma, unsuccessful ones, but close calls. There have been questions about the nature of the authority in the church. There have been questions about the nature of the authority of the lay people. I think that's really what's been aggrandized since Vatican II. All these questions, the ill works of the Jesuit, all that stuff, I agree. There are pressure points. But the church has to be one. The Orthodox Church is holy and apostolic because it has real bishops and real sacraments. We'd never take that from them. But it's not one, and it's not Catholic even in the lowercase c sense. It's not all around the world. Right? I mean, people understand the Catholic Church is the main character. And like Protestants, Orthodox are just reacting to it. And the Council of Nicaea is not a huge slam dunk for authority, but Ephesus, the third council, will be. This is when Cyril of Alexandria writes Celestine and just says, look, can you, the guy in Rome, can you excommunicate the guy in Constantinople, Nestorius? Because he needs to be excommunicated. You alone can do it. He calls him the head of the whole faith. The head of the apostles is Blessed Peter. We rely on the authority of the blessed apostle Peter, on whom the church was founded, and whose successor the blessed Pope Celestine is. Your Holiness, who holds the place of Peter, this is read at Ephesus, the Prince of the Apostles has rightly judged this matter and condemned Nestorius. He is the Supreme Court here. The Pope is the combo of the Supreme Court and the presidency. It's not academic. This is the easiest. I wouldn't call any part of what we did. It was really a grueling debate, and it was long, and it was a slog, and both of us are skilled, long-time debaters. And when I see this idiotic Protestant guy pop up on Twitter saying, what did he say? Taco talks. I mean, it's just.
Is this the like that weird kid that wouldn't?
That guy, yeah.
He wouldn't
pray for the kids at Minneapolis school.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I have no respect for that. Look, I have respect for Orthodox, Eastern Orthodoxy, because it's really close enough to, like, I get where smart people can be errant here. It's a close enough call. I have a lot of friends who are Orthodox. I like Jay a lot. He's a smart guy. He's a good debater. And in the Filioque, it's like, fine, I get how like reasonable minds can differ on this. It's a smaller disparity of worldviews than they say it is. We say we're kind of closer together, and they're just being dishonest about, monarchia, polyarchia, and whether or not the Catholic Church originally stood for it when they started posting Filioque with Charlemagne, before Charlemagne. I get it. But the papacy is the most like of a boner. The papacy is the most of like just a stupid error, an unforced error that you can't get back, to my friends there. And it doesn't matter how bad you think Vatican I or Vatican II are. Okay, they're not as bad as you're being told. That's brainwash. But that's 1900 years later almost. The prompt for this debate that Jay said not one word to was in 33 AD, in hard brackets, When Jesus established the Petrine ministry, late in 33 AD, before he went to the cross, did he establish one? And Jay's like, well, yeah, okay. Well, I guess what does that require? A constitutional attorney would always say, what does that language require? And they're saying, well, it's an honorary. Okay, but I'm just going through and reading what the earliest patristics said. Well, I read what the scriptures say and what the symbolism is, but the most flowery language there of anything establishing Peter as the Pope is in Matthew 16, Luke 22, John 21 itself. You're Peter, on this rock I build my church. That's pretty good. I will give you the keys, symbol of the Davidic prime ministerial office from Isaiah 22nd chapter. The strengthen your brethren in Luke 22, I would say that could be floored or not. John 21, feed my lambs, feed my sheep. This is, I'd say, the middle strength scriptural passage. But these three together show primacy of jurisdiction, teaching, and pastoral care. If that was all that existed, my Orthodox brethren, then I would be like, yeah, it could go either way. Same thing that Orthodox and Catholics say about the scriptural evidence for the Eucharist. I always say this, in the Synoptics Gospels, if Matthew, Mark, and Luke were all that existed for showing the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, then it sounds like it could be symbolic or it could be real. It could go either way. But then you have John chapter 6, 30 to 70, the gospel of the bread of life in the Gospel of John. And that pushes it beyond anything. My bread is, my body is literal meat. My blood is literal drink. I mean, he uses the Greek word for literal. How do you say it's figurative? So that's kind of what I say about our scriptural foundations. Matthew 16's not as strong as John chapter 6 is to the Eucharist, but it is you're the rock. On the rock I build the church, and I give you the Davidic keys, the Isiatic Davidic keys. Okay, that's strong. But here's the thing. Neither of us are Protestants, my friends, Orthodox friends. So you guys, luckily, are a lot closer a religion to us than Protestants. So to look at the patristic testimony. And Clement of Rome is intervening authoritatively in before the year 100 AD. It's just a fact. That's that universal jurisdiction at work before 100 AD, like our fourth pope. And Ignatius and Irenaeus and Cyprian of Carthage are all saying the principal church is Rome. This is not just honorary. Sacerdotal priestly unity arises out of the principal church. This is exactly what we're saying today at Vatican I, after Vatican I. I'm not trying to blow you over with rhetoric. And then at the third council, the Council of Ephesus in 431, which is usually what I go to kind of first if I have very limited time. But I want to cover the patristic testimony, which I did today. That starts even before Nicaea. Holy and blessed Peter, the prince and head of the apostles, the column of the faith, common term among the patristics for the Pope. The foundation of the Catholic Church received the keys of the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ, referring to Matthew 16. And that to him was given the power of binding and loosing sins, who until this day and forever lives and judges in his successors. Judges. That's not what any of the other apostles or any of the other bishops who stand in the place of the other apostles does. They do not judge any of the other jurisdictions. Now, the language gets better in these first 7 councils, and we're going to talk about what your rule of faith is if you don't have a way to if you stop accepting certain of the councils the way the Orthodox do. We'll talk about your circular rule of faith without a pinnacle, without a leader. But at Chalcedon, Leo's tome is read, and it says Peter is spoken through Leo. And like Peter is spoken, the matter is settled. And also at Chalcedon, this is of note, no one will ever talk about this. This shows the crippling and just devastating circularity of the Orthodox rule of faith. The Oriental Orthodox never accepted Council number 4. We agree on the first 7, right? They never agreed on this council They thought it was like, I think like you're having to pick between monophysitism and Nestorianism, basically, if I remember what their view of Chalcedon is, Ecumenical Council of Four. They never accept it. And they're still at odds today, the Oriental Orthodox with the Eastern Orthodox, which is supposed to mean the same thing, right? Oriental Eastern, but they're different. And it shows the circularity in their rule of faith. The Oriental Orthodox have lineal bishop apostles. The Oriental Orthodox have real sacraments. They were there at an ecumenical council. And for the conciliarism that typifies the rule of faith for Orthodox, they just say, but we're not going to accept it because we don't like the results. Same as the Eastern Orthodox do with the Council of Florence. It's an ecumenical council. 31 of your 33 representatives voted with the majority, saying we were wrong about the Filioque and the papacy. And there's literally no plausible account given for the question, so why don't you guys follow Florence? It was just because you decided you didn't want to afterwards, a decade later. And the circularity ends up being that the councils are ecumenical when we accept them, and we accept them whenever they're truly ecumenical. That's what the Oriental Orthodox said at Chalcedon. Now, the Eastern Orthodox people are right. This is Council number 4. It is binding. It is ecumenical. But you do the same thing as they do when it comes to Florence and parts of the other first 13 councils. Parts or wholes of the first 13 other councils, whatever Florence was. It might not have been number 14. I lose track after like 10. But Constantinople II, which is like the Constantinople III, which is the 6th council in 680, honors Pope Agatho's letter as authoritative, received as binding. And it says this, in the Octa, Peter is Prince of the Apostles who continues the promise undefiled to the end. That's pretty good. But it doesn't say universal jurisdiction. It just says he's the Prince of the Apostles. Okay, how about Council 7, Nicaea II? Letter of Pope Hadrian, also read and put into the Octa. Primatial authority everywhere on earth. This is the ringer. This is the dead-ass ringer, man. Primatial authority everywhere on earth was given by the Redeemer of the world himself to the blessed Apostle Peter. Through the same apostle, the Holy Catholic and Apostolic Roman Church, see that connection to the 4 marks there, has held till now and will hold for all time primacy and sovereign authority. That's just the dead ass ringer. There's just no coming back from that. Oh, hit me up. How is that wrong? Nicaea too. Now, Constantinople IV, I think we had what we call Constantinople IV in 869. You guys went into minor schism then or something. I forget my history exactly with Constantinople IV, but it's Council 8. We say it happened in 869. You had a slightly different one in 879 of your own. I'm reading from your Orthodox Constantinople IV, and it's probably the best one. Letter of Pope John VIII. He says, the chief of the apostles, Peter, has the authority of universal binding and loosing. That's the point you always quibble on. That's your council. You're the conciliarists. This is donezo. So it's not just the scriptures. 3 scriptural papal passages of varying textualist merit. I mean, they're all spoken by Jesus, so they're anagogically all of the same merit. He meant what he meant, but heuristically, epistemically, they're of varying merit for our ears and our brains. And the most obvious one is the first one, the keys. But we have the interpretation of several of the earliest patristics, which I read you, and the 4th Pope acting on the universal jurisdiction. Then I just read you councils you guys accept from the beginning saying this is a power of universal binding and loosing. Then at Florence, what happened? 31 out of 33 of your delegates affirm the reunion, say, baby, take us back. We're sorry. On the Filioque and the papacy itself, we're wrong. We're rejoining the church. You did rejoin the Catholic Church. But over a decade later, your governments and peasants and some scholars rejected with pitchforks, revolted, insurrection, pitchfork style, because of the union, and coerced under duress the delegates into removing their affirmation of papal primacy in Filioque. In order to get the patriarch who didn't affirm the union, they had to remove or ignore that one, the Patriarch of Constantinople, the leader of your church. You had to remove him. Then you had to remove another one or force him to resign. I forget what it was. Another one who also affirmed union at Florence. And it took a third guy to come in and say, no, even though Florence was ecumenical, we're not going to acknowledge it. And this shows the crippling circularity of your rule of faith, just like Chalcedon does vis-a-vis the Oriental Orthodox. You had to go to the third man to just cheat, to pretend that the Union of Florence never happened, that it wasn't an ecumenical council. It was, by everyone's standards. You just say, well, the councils are ecumenical when we accept them. And the accepted councils are ecumenical. Okay, well, how do you know you accepted them? Because it looks like you accepted Florence. Well, the accepted councils are ecumenical. You're like, okay, so it's ecumenical. And they're like, yeah, but we don't, but it's not doctrinally sound. That wasn't part of your rule of faith. This is just Protestantism. Well, we don't like the outcome, so we're going to say it's not doctrinally sound. You have a circularity in your rule of faith. Much more crippling than Pope Francis did this or that. We have a visible sign of unity on earth. And if you don't believe me,
they always talk about like the kissing of the Quran and all like the gay stuff in the church and all that.
There have been super lame popes. What of it? I mean, it's not really a difficult spot the way you think it is for the Pope to, I mean, it's bad when we have a bad Pope. Felt really oppressive under Pope Francis. I don't know how it's going to be under Pope Leo. It's sad that it kind of does matter how bad or how good a Pope is, and we've had over 100 saint popes. But that's what it is. That's the cost of doing business. That, Jesus picked Peter, who he knew he would deny him 3 times, who he knew had a cowardly streak, who he knew had a goofball streak, who he knew he wasn't a good scholar. He's just a fisherman. Jesus made Judas Iscariot into a bishop. The bishops aren't perfect. You guys know that. The Protestants still don't get that. But you guys know that. The bishops aren't perfect. Even the lead bishop with universal jurisdiction is not perfect. We kiss the Quran. That's just not, that doesn't sweat us. So, I'll read you a combo of fathers and councils supporting papal primacy. I'm looking for something because I mean there's more support with the patristics than just the ones I read. I just don't know. There's so much that I have to pick what I want to even read to show the support. Okay, so I mean, just to show, I know some of these I've been reading only Eastern Fathers, but I will just show that some of these are Western Fathers because they're sufficiently early. Augustine wrote, already 2 councils have been sent to the Apostolic See. Okay, he said that in around 400. He said already 2 councils have been sent to the Apostolic See. He meant for ratification. Optatus of Milevis said, on Peter first is the city of Rome. In the city of Rome was bestowed the episcopal cathedra so that unity might be preserved. That's in 367 AD, he says that. Cyprian again of Carthage says there's one chair founded upon Peter by the word of the Lord. In Epistle 43.5. That's in 251. Cyprian of Carthage. They dare to sail to the chair of Peter and to the principal church whence sacerdotal unity has arisen. I already read you Irenaeus. Ignatius of Antioch said in 107 AD, I do not issue orders to you as Peter and Paul did. They were apostles. I am a convict. Irenaeus of Lyon said it is a matter of necessity that every church should agree with the church in Rome on account of its more powerful preeminence. I already read you that one. Clement of Rome said, if any shall disobey, this is in 96, this is a repeat. If any shall disobey the words spoken by him through us, let them know that they will involve themselves in a transgression. Jerome said, I follow no leader save Christ, so I communicate with none but your blessedness, that is, with the chair of Peter. That's Jerome in 375 AD. Now, I know these tend to be Westerns, but how about Maximus the Confessor? How about Maximus? If one does not agree with the Apostolic See of Rome, he is neither in the Catholic Church nor even called a Christian. This is Maximus the Confessor. If one does not agree with the Apostolic See of Rome, he is neither in the Catholic Church nor even called a Christian. That just puts the matter beyond any dispute. So, I don't know. I gave the example. I thought it was a good one. Because I like analogies, to Back to the Future 2. In Back to the Future 2, good analogy. They go to the future, 2015. Marty buys a sports almanac to bring back, they didn't have the internet then, to bring back to 1985 to place bets, because he's got the whole documentary history of all the sports matches from between 85 and 2015. So he's just going to use the almanac to bet. You know, I mean, if you haven't seen Back to the Future, then I don't know. Heaven help you. What's wrong with you? But in the future, the bad guy sees him, Biff sees him. Marty, at the same time, Doc Brown scolds him, says, you got to leave that here, throw it away in the trash in 2015. But the bad guy figures out everything that's been going on with Marty. And he steals the idea, steals the time machine at some point. I forget exactly how. Yeah. When they're busy in 2015 solving some problem, he steals the time machine. He does Marty's idea. So he goes back. He doesn't go back to 1985, though, the present of the film. So he goes back to 1955. And when he's still young and can make a difference, and places all these bets using the almanac. Doc and Marty don't know. So when they return, this is like, if you have to explain it, it loses all its force. Doc and Marty don't know, so they go back from 2015 to 1985, and it's an altered 1985. Why? It's a horrible one where Biff like reigns supreme in Hill Valley. Why? Because they didn't know what happened with Biff going back 30 years before to 1955 and making himself all powerful because he can bet any amount of money what Marty was going to do. Okay, so they figure it out because I guess Doc Brown's a total genius. He can figure out how to travel in time, so figure that out. That obviously, reasonably at the beginning of Back to the Future 2, this is just 5 minutes after all this stuff happens, Doc figures it out and gets a green blackboard, old school chalkboard, and is explaining to Marty. Marty's like, okay, well, this isn't bad. All we have to do is go back to 2015, a couple minutes before I threw out the sports almanac so Biff can't get it. And that's Jay Dyer, the way he was trying to reason, errantly reasoning about timelines. So Jay Dyer is Marty McFly. Let's just go back to 2015 now. From this altered 1985, this subjunctive 1985, let's just go back to 2015, and we'll intercept me, Marty, throwing this out and Biff taking it and all that. And Doc's like, dude, you don't get it. The problem, the important moment takes place in 1955 when Biff went back in time and gave himself the almanac, right? So you can't solve a problem that originated in 1955 by addressing something in 2015. It's just that simple. Why? Because if we go back to 2015 on this altered, subjuncted 1985 timeline, Biff won't be there giving himself the almanac book, right? That already happened. That already happened in the past, present, future history. So in this timeline, we have to go back to 1955. That doc understanding, well, you got to nip a problem in the bud. You have to deal with something as it existed from its inception. That's me in this papacy debate. I'm like, I don't care. It doesn't matter if we're debating whether or not Jesus established the Petrine ministry in winter of 33 AD. And Jay wants to talk about the whole debate, Vatican I or Vatican II. Or, a little before then. I guess the oldest he wanted to talk, not 33 AD. That's the equivalent of 1955. You got to go there and talk, because that's when the handoff happened of Biff to Biff. Well, the handoff of the keys from Jesus to Peter happened in 33 AD. You got to go get in your timeline and go to 33 AD. See? But Jay mainly ever went on, when we debated on Tim Pool, he just wanted to talk about Vatican II. He wanted to talk some about Vatican I this time, so that's nearly 2,000 years after the 33 AD, 1,900 years almost after the 33 AD. Or no, we'll go back as far as Unum Sanctum. What is that? 1,400 years after the key point in time, the handoff. I kept saying this. I'm like, Jay, I get that you don't get it, and I guess you're just going to keep talking on your talking points, but you made an error in the way you prepared for this debate, in the way that you've thought about the timeline. Anything that you want to do, because you're a believing Christian, anything that you want to do or have planned to do, or any schematics you've laid out to attack the papacy, don't make sense unless you go to the handoff, the Biff to Biff handoff, the Jesus to Peter handoff of the keys. What did he establish there? Because the fact of the matter is, and immediately after that, how did the apostles and the earliest patristics receive what the handoff meant? That counts too. And I just showed you what they thought it meant. He has primatial authority everywhere on earth. That's your counsel, my dude. Primatial authority everywhere on earth. That's not just some symbolic thing. You're beat on this. And the fact that you're beat on the papacy shows that Filioque is, maybe we're 60% right and you're 40% right on, but it at least shows that, it's not this big issue that enables insurrection, papal insurrection. You can't just ignore the fact that if you're a Christian, Jesus set up Peter and all of the Peters after him for the next 266 at least to be the pyramidal peak, the peak of the pyramid, pyramidal hierarchy. So it's like my analogy. It's just there's no getting over the timeline problem. That if we're debating, did Jesus set this up in 33 AD? You're like, well, but it was invalidated in Vatican I or Vatican II. I'm like, no, it wasn't. You're exaggerating how bad it was. Vatican I, you got to read the Relatio of Bishop Gasser. It explains everything, as my dude Elijah Yazzie is always making this point, and Orthodox don't want to talk to him. You got to read the Relatio of Bishop Gasser. It sounds just like what they were saying here. Clement of Rome, Ignatius of Antioch, Irenaeus, Cyprian. He's the head, but he's not supposed to be a lone ranger. He is supposed to do things like poll the bishops. The only two exercises of ex cathedra authority since Vatican I and probably in the last 500 or 600 years. It's weird that it's a little bit hard to get exact counts of exercises of ex cathedra. But the only two were Third Marian Dogma, Fourth Marian Dogma in the 1850s and 1950s. And guess what? Both those popes polled all the bishops because they're like, I'm going to make an ex cathedra claim. That doesn't make me a wizard or know everything. That just means that it's automatically, because I want to skip the whole process of a council over this or whatever. I'm going to do it. I want to make sure it's right. So I'm going to poll the bishops first and say, have you always taught this? Has the church everywhere and always recognized this? I'm just going to rubber stamp it. That's much more like Clement, Ignatius, Irenaeus, Cyprian of Carthage. You got to go read the Relatio of Bishop Gasser, which everyone had to read before they affirmed Pastor Aeternus. Everyone had to read it, okay? But if I'm wrong and the Catholic Church is wrong at Vatican I and Vatican II, then that doesn't invalidate Catholicism because the handoff happened earlier in the timeline. That invalidates Christianity. If Jesus was wrong or lied, I can't get the words past my teeth, but if Jesus somehow was wrong or lied about the papacy, then that just means not just that the popes aren't who Catholics were assuming, but Jesus isn't who Christians were assuming he was. If Jesus could be wrong about the papacy. It doesn't just affect us. You're Christians, you're apostolic Christians, sacramental Christians, unlike the Protestants who acknowledge, in some sense, Jesus established something with Peter, unlike Protestants again. And if it's something you had to acknowledge for 1,000 years, but not the next 1,000 years, then Christianity's false. That's why you need to return home to Rome. That's why it's so important. This isn't, if you own Vatican I or Vatican II, it's not an own on Catholics, it's an own on Christians. That's why it's like, you should be hoping as much as I am that Bishop Gasser was right in his Relatio. This is not just rhetoric. Let me,
would they,
yeah, go ahead.
like just thinking about it from the Orthodox point of view, like if they were to concede the papacy, is it enough to depend on the Filioque and Pure Act? Like the two sections? Like, okay, well, we have those two things. I was seeing some things along those lines where the Orthodox were kind of ignoring the papacy, but then they were like, but the Filioque, but Pure Act.
But no, I mean, the Filioque, okay, even again, we call it in law assuming arguendo that you're right about the Filioque. You're not. The most important section of the history of the Filioque is from about 800 to about 1285, or at least 869 to 1285. For those 400 plus years, there is no Orthodox Eastern person, because the schism happened halfway in between. There's no Eastern or Eastern Orthodox person, depending if we're talking before or after 1054, and I asked Jay, and he couldn't come up with it, who is willing to say that there's an eternal procession between the Spirit and Christ. And why were none of them saying it for that 400 years? Because they were overreacting to a straw man, what they thought the Catholics meant by Filioque. So they overreacted. They thought we meant polyarchia instead of monarchia. We never meant that. They started realizing at Blackernay, oh, they did mean monarchia all along. We misread that. But for those 400 years, they just completely overreacted. And they're like, well, we want to be as unlike them in their Filioque theology as possible. So we're just going to say it's this economic rapport, temporal only missiology when Jesus sends or breathes the Spirit. It's only temporal. There's no eternal relation. Not one single thinker during this 400 years affirms the eternal relation. And the way that now you affirm the eternal relation between Jesus and the Spirit, whether or not it's hypostatic or energetic, I don't even know. Who even cares what all that means? You guys certainly don't know. No one can say. But the big question is it economic and just temporal, or is it eternal? We've always said eternal. You guys had it wrong for 415 years because you're overreacting to what you thought we were saying about another dimension of the Filioque. And Jay couldn't mention one. He said, yeah. And then I said, what year was that? And then he mentioned like Blackernay or something that happened right after it. See? So we're saying basically the same thing now. You guys dithered from the 9th century to the 13th century. You guys dithered. You went back and forth and you said something that's really, 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 really bad, semi-Arian, that Jesus could only send or spy or whatever the procession from Jesus to the Spirit was. You said it could only happen temporally for 400 years. And Jay agreed. Okay. Yeah, he couldn't come up with one instance of any Eastern thinker in that whole 415 years saying eternal relation, which both you Orthodox and us Catholics affirm now. So is that a big enough issue to invalidate the timeline? No. Could Marty go back to 2015 or 1984 or 1956 and solve the problem? No. He had to go back to the handoff. Even if you were way right about Filioque and we were way wrong, that happened centuries after the handoff. The keys handoff, which is the perfect equivalent of the almanac handoff. I mean, what people start doing when you make a devastatingly good analogy is they always just say, "Oh, that's stupid. That's Back to the Future." I'm like, I'm not saying it's not Back to the Future. I'm not saying it's not a trifling cultural thing. I'm trying to make it where people can actually understand, and that's the difference between trying to.
They're complaining.
Yeah,
they were complaining about, a lot of people were complaining about that during the debate. Like, oh, we didn't get it.
We didn't get it.
I felt the same. Obviously I felt the same way. I was like, oh, I don't understand a lot of this too. But then when you try,
they bitch about it. They're like, well, I get what you're actually saying, but Jesus isn't Biff or whatever. Jesus isn't. I'm not saying that's what an analogy is. It's a pros and equivocal. It's called an analogy. An analogy is a pros and equivocal. It means from one. There's one thing that is in common between the 1955 Biff to Biff, old Biff to young Biff almanac handoff, and the 33 AD keys handoff from Jesus to Peter. There's only one way they're alike. And the one way they're alike is, drumroll please, it's the fact that if you want to challenge the effects of the handoff, you have to challenge the fact that the handoff took place. And you have to challenge it in time, in 33 AD or in 1955. I defy anybody to show why it's not actually a really good analogy. Like a really, really good analogy. Now, in honor of Elijah Yazzie, because he showed me all this, the one place where the papacy is actually defined, I will give you this, Orthodox, it's weird. It's totally weird. It's a kind of it's not much of a pressure point. It's just weird and it's kind of goofy that the papacy wasn't defined until like 1870, 1875. I don't know. I don't know why history unfolds the way it does sometimes. I sincerely don't. That doesn't invalidate any of it. But the papacy is actually defined there at Vatican I. So it's fine to say, okay, well, with a little bit of good faith, which a lot of Orthodox don't have when we enter into this discussion, same as like Protestants don't have if you're talking anything other than sola scriptura, they just laugh at it. With a little bit of good faith, let's actually look at what happened at Vatican I. There was two goals at Vatican I. Two goals: to define the role of the Pope and to define the role of the bishops. They tended to the first thing first, and they're going to tend to the second thing second. Well, the Franco-Prussian War broke out after they were sort of done doing the first thing, and they never defined the role of the bishops, which threw out of all proportion the ostensible power structure. Because all you did is you defined this one plenary power of the Pope, which he did have this plenary power. It is what we would call presidentially a plenary power, an executive authority. He can, he has universal jurisdiction, and he has this power that he's barely ever going to use of ex cathedra claims. That sounds just like, boom, whoa, this is way out of whack. What? But the bishops were going to be, their powers were going to be described too, but that never happened. Except for this relatio of Bishop Gasser, which Pope Pius said needed to be read to understand what they would be ratifying in Pastor Aeternus. So the relatio of Bishop Gasser explains it all. It's a role of explaining papal authority to the bishops before the vote. And this I have to double check on, but I think it was also part of the shortcut because they knew they're going to have to wrap up because of Franco-Prussia. So you have to have the relatio to understand papal infallibility. Sole headship is for avoiding schism. Take, I don't know, at Chalcedon, the Eastern Orthodox and the Oriental Orthodox. Eternal schism between the Eastern and the Oriental Orthodox. They're never going to agree about Chalcedon. Why? Because you need sole headship, a visible sign of unity. We do not separate the Pope, even minimally, from the consent of the Church, as long as that consent is not laid down as a condition which is either antecedent or consequent, says Bishop Gasser. It explains the most misunderstood line in Vatican I, Chapter 4. The decree of the Pope is irreformable. Gasser's relatio explains it all completely satisfactorily. The Pope cannot generate answers he doesn't know. He's not an oracle. Even a Pope who speaks ex cathedra, like Pius IX or Pius XII in the 1850s or the 1950s, is not an oracle, does not know all. He can just guarantee his words are immediate dogma. How? Gasser says by poll the bishops. Make sure before you do an ex cathedra thing, it's still a shortcut this way. It's a shortcut to holding a whole council. Even if you're like, hey, bishops, does this ring true with you? I don't want to be this Lone Ranger guy, George W. Bush guy, getting us involved in some goofy conflict, and then it's just an embarrassment for the next 1,000 years with the Second Iraq War, or his dad with the First Iraq War. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to poll the bishops first. Gasser says you should do this. It's a moral, but it's not a juridical obligation to seek episcopal consent. Oh, does this also, he says a moral, but not a juridical obligation to seek episcopal consent. Does this also help to explain something like your favorite talking point, EOs, like Vigilius? Yeah. If there's a moral, but not a juridical obligation that the Pope has to seek his collegial bishops' episcopal consent, oh yeah, he can do it, but that doesn't mean he should do it without their consent. Holy cow, when you're actually defining papal authority, there's actually a needle, a thread that can go in all these needles. Both instances of ex cathedra, Marian dogma number 3, Marian dogma number 4, 1850s, 1950s, bear witness to this. Because of the Franco-Prussian War, the bishop's power wasn't laid out, but Gasser's relatio is a kind of rough and ready version of it, because they didn't have the time to fully tend to the bishop's power. So he does the quickest thing. By the way, Lumen Gentium, which has that line in paragraph 25 on the papacy that is considered important, quotes Gasser 4 times. Now, here's something that's quite interesting. Both the Swiss bishops and the German bishops sent letters, one of which got put into the Octa, I think. I forget which one. I think the German, but not the Swiss. The Swiss letters in 1871 says the definition of the council has not in any way brought about a separation of the head from the members, meaning he's not a Lone Ranger, meaning he's still their colleague. He's their head. Does this sound a little bit more like what you guys are saying you affirmed in the first millennium? Yes. The Pope is not in any way separated head from members. He should be a colleague to them. He is the boss. He's juridically their head, but morally he should be seeking approval, unless it's some absolute exception and he happens to be the expert in the world on a given issue. Most popes aren't the expert in the world on any given issue. He should be seeking their sort of soft consent. Again, this explains away a lot of the pressure point discomfort that you think you're applying with Vigilius. And I didn't even have time to get into this in the debate. As the popes did before the council, the Swiss bishop's letter in 1871 says, as the popes did before the council, so also now they continue to strengthen their brother bishops in the faith, seeking their consent. Seeking the consent of the bishops. This is at Vatican I. This is the relatio that Pope Pius made them all read. And this is why popes don't go around making ex cathedra claims. This is why they don't do it. The only 2 ex cathedra claims you can be absolutely sure ever happened were in 1854 and 1951, 3rd Marian dogma, 4th Marian dogma, and the Pope sent out a poll to the bishops. The Holy Spirit gives the Pope infallibility, direct quote, but he's not an oracle. The Pope, if he's a good Pope, the way the Piuses were, 9 and 12, were good popes in differing ways. They didn't want to make an error a la Francis, the soft error or whatever. And so they made sure that if they're going to speak ex cathedra, even Francis didn't speak ex cathedra even once. If we're going to do this, then we're going to make sure we get it right. Okay, the German bishop's letter, I think this was put into the Octa. In 1875, the letter begins with maximalist claims like Eastern Orthodox make about, and some Catholics even make these papal maximalist claims. And the letter begins with them and says they need to be refuted. The Pope is not a Lone Ranger. He's not a guy with maximum authority who should be wielding it often. He has a guy with maximum authority who should barely be using it. He should be collegial. They said specifically, the Pope has appropriated to himself the rights of the bishops and taken the place of each bishop. That's one of the claims that he says this is not true. That's what maximalists say. That's what certain weird Catholics who like maximalism say. This is how the Eastern Orthodox tend to mischaracterize what we're saying. And they say this is false. All these exertions are bereft of any foundation, say the German bishop's letter. You'll see why the German letter is really important in a second. Just as the papacy is of divine institution, so also is the episcopacy. So that's good. That's why they are colleagues to the Pope, even though he's their head and the visible sign of unity. Popes only involve themselves when bishops are wrong, meaning it is an appellate jurisdiction. That's called an appellate jurisdiction. There's no other name for that. The Celestine versus Nestorius through Cyril of Alexandria. It had already happened, 1,600 years before, 1,400 years before, so they could go ahead and do it. And Pope Pius IX, who presided over Vatican I, responds to the Germans by saying, you have brought glory with this interpretation. This is the only correct interpretation. So there you have it.
Elijah's in chat right now, and he said, Tim, this right here is where you should have cornered Jay. No EO has ever been questioned in this way in a papacy debate. I'm trying to set one up, and none want to do it.
People, look, here's the thing. I disagree. No, this is not where I don't think this is where I should have cornered him, because this diminishes what I'm saying about the timeline. The timeline is the most important thing. This was not a debate on, did the church fall into error 1870 years after Jesus established the Petrine ministry on what the Petrine ministry is, or 1054. That's the other goofy thing, as an aside. They broke away 1054, not 1870. So that's weird, right? But no, here's why I disagree that this was the most important. The most important thing is the timeline. We were debating the establishment, Elijah, of the Petrine ministry, which took place in like winter of 33 AD. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. So if something went wrong here, I agree with you. Nothing went wrong at Vatican I. At Vatican II, nothing catastrophic went wrong. There was some goofy disciplinary stuff that was really crippling that was brought in, but nothing catastrophic, we agree, happened at Vatican I. Thanks for all your help on that. But that's not what we were debating. What we were debating is it prescinded from whether or not, if Jesus, God-man, established a Petrine ministry, and he established it and it was early on, a sovereign universal jurisdiction, whether or not, if it went wrong 1800 years later, the only thing that I care to say in the debate is, well, if it went wrong at Vatican I, it did not, then that would have invalidated all of Christianity, not just Catholicism. And I proved it. That's just a fact. It was established. You have Clement of Rome intervening with a universal jurisdiction in 96 AD, and all of these patristic fathers affirming, yeah, he's got a universal jurisdiction, and all of these councils affirming, yeah, he's got a universal jurisdiction. He is the sign of unity. We will just be these goofy conciliarists, which is all EOs are on this rule of faith matter, if we don't have someone to say which councils are actually valid. So it invalidates all of Christianity if Vatican I falls away. And I'm not really worried about that qua the Orthodox, because they're already Christians. So then if they're like, well, maybe I shouldn't be a Christian, it's like, okay, once you acknowledge that you have to buy the whole cart, you can't just get the milk for free. You can't just say, well, Christianity's still valid. even though Jesus established a papacy, and maybe the papacy looks false. It's like, no, Christianity's fake because of all these things that happened right while the apostles, what Jesus said to the apostles on their last night, or on their last weeks, I should say. Not all this happened at the Last Supper. Last week or two of Jesus's friendship with the apostles. And then while the apostles still lived, the apostle John still lived when Clement of Rome was in charge of all jurisdictions. So you'd say that's where you have to go to check the handoff. And and Orthodox just want to split, and they want to say, well, maybe, yeah, okay, Jesus established a Petrine ministry, but it went wrong. So we could still be Christians. No, you can't be a Christian if it went wrong. That disproves Jesus. That's why it's so important. And then once you get them to buy in some, then you go and you show them. Go watch Elijah Yazzie debate an Orthodox on did Vatican I go wrong. But the ante that's upped at that debate, if you go watch Elijah do a whole extensive, masterful debate on Vatican I, which he's really good at, is can we all continue to be Christians at all? Or did Jesus lie when he gave Peter the keys and he said, you know, what all the patristics interpreted as, you have a universal jurisdiction until the end of time. Well, if he gave him the power and the power got exaggerated and the papacy fell off, then Jesus falls off. Then all you have to do is show them, no, look at Gasser, look at the Relatio, look at the historical surroundings of Vatican I, look at what they wanted to happen. A moral, but not a juridical obligation to actually poll the bishops. That's all we have.
That's a really good way of putting it. I never thought about it before. Just if you're not taking Christ at his word, you're basically just calling him a liar.
Well, that's
like their entire system is set up to basically say Christ is a liar about the papacy. Right? That's
the hinge point of my entire argument, and that's why it's goofy when you get other people that are like, "Oh man, this is my area of expertise," and it really is. And I'd love to watch an Elijah debate on this, but they're like, "This is where you should have gone." No, that actually that's just throwing spaghetti on the wall. Where you have to go when you have to look at the prompt of what you're debating, and the prompt of what Jay and I were debating is what happened in 33 A.D. And you can look at immediate evidence, maybe a little bit after it, you know, while the apostle John still lives, to help interpret. But you don't get to go to 1054 or, you know, what year was Unum Sanctum written, or, you know, 1300, 1400, or 1870 or 1962, Vatican II, to adjudicate that matter. Me and Jay were debating what happened in late 33 AD, when Jesus said these three scriptural things to Peter. What do those three things that Jesus said to Peter require? That's what we were debating. Do you see the difference? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. To be fair to Elijah, he is saying like, yeah.
Well, I know we're on the same team 100%. I'm just saying that's why I wasn't going to.
I don't know if you could hear me. Sorry, my mic was off, but Elijah in chat is saying, yeah, that totally.
Elijah boosted me up and showed me all this stuff before the first time we debated at Tim Pool, and I was like, hey, let's talk about Vatican I. I hadn't thought about it like all summer. I promise you that, because I'm not a theologian. I'm a Thomistic trained philosopher, right? I've like 10 years of Thomistic metaphysics under my belt, like post-bachelor. So when it comes to these theology things, you know, they're easier than studying metaphysics. It's the hardest thing to study. And I've taught church history for like 10 years. So I know some of them, but it's great when you get a guy that's an expert on it, like Elijah, and he's like, yo, you're going to debate Jay at Tim Pool in, what was that, late May or early June? Look at the Relatio. Look at this, look at that. He came on my show. Everyone go watch that show I did with Elijah Yazzie on Vatican I. I want to see him go debate it. Right. But none of them will touch him because they know they're going to lose. Even the people that have just watched this little primer on it know they're going to lose, because then Elijah knows more about it than me. I would always support watching an Elijah Vatican I debate. So he got me boosted up. I wanted to debate that on Tim Pool, but that was just a yelling match or whatever, an interruption match. And I hadn't worked it out where I was like, well, but we really have to establish first that Christ established the Petrine ministry. What does it mean at Vatican I, Vatican II, if, as they claim, if we fell off? Well, what it means then, I'm establishing this first, is that Christianity's false. You see what I'm saying? So they don't get to pick and choose. Was it Hegel or Holderlin called this the night in which all cows are black? You don't get to have the night in which all cows are black. If Jesus established a Petrine ministry in 33 AD, and he really meant for it to be a universal jurisdiction, then if it fell off at Vatican I or Vatican II, then Jesus is wrong, Christianity's false. Everybody go home. What are we doing?
That's so true.
It's the night in which all cows are black, bro.
Some of the Orthodox are really getting emotional in chat here.
Well, super chat then. If you're feeling verklempt over
very hurt by this.
If you're feeling verklempt, then super chat. Where we put a lot of effort into this debate. I traveled further for it than Jay, because I'm not from Florida. Brought the whole fam. It's cool. I like to do this because I'm in a place to do this, and it was a good time. But I will say this much, it's nice. The super chats. We don't do this every show. We're not always requiring people to super chat if you want to make comments that get read out. Elijah guys, he's different. He's a friend of the show. He helped me prepare for all this, but it is a way of reimbursing ourselves, even for the gas. So we stayed in a hotel on the other Elijah Schaefer. Thank you guys, and thanks for moderating. But we had to pay for gas for an RV. It's nice to get paid. So super chat us, and you'll get these notes. And even if you're Protestant and you don't like them, you can burn them or whatever, or you can just cry into them. But I'm not trying to be like own the libs here, but this is how we chose to go about it. Should I do the raffle from the Filioque note show?
Yes. And MKG, if you're in chat or watching the stream, you won the last raffle. He
won the first raffle, right?
The first raffle.
He won the raffle.
And each raffle ticket is in Super Chat. Every $10 gets a raffle ticket, and you win Tim's signed notes and a signed case for patriarchy. So now we're doing yesterday's show, right? That was on the Filioque.
Yeah, this is the Filioque.
Who won
did you
that
write
one?
Here? I can't.
Oh, sorry.
I don't even know if you wrote anything.
Chicken scratch is this? Oh, is it? That is an empty ticket again.
Seriously?
Sorry. Yeah, I guess I ripped one off. Sorry.
Woman move. Braden Tanner.
Braden Tanner.
Braden, yeah, he had the odds the way MTG did.
He did like a 200 super chat yesterday. So
wait, who won the first one? Who won the Pure Act one?
MKG won Pure Act.
MTG. I was like, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
MKG won Pure Act.
Okay.
And he'll get a signed case for patriarchy. Braden Tanner won Filioque, and we'll get a signed case for patriarchy. And then today we'll collect the super chats, and then the next show we'll announce who won.
All right. So what super chats do we have?
Okay, sir. Let's see. So the J Pine just said happy Saturday for $10. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
MKG, our winner from the first one. Trivium and Quadrivium. You just said, I think, perfect sign.
What about Trivium and Quadrivium?
I think that was when you were talking about your homeschooling program that we're doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing. Great. I mean, geez. If you saw this week's news, with the Catholic school shooting, I wanted to be careful about this because people get to be eggshell skull about such things, but I'm not talking to the two parents of the two little decedents. We've been praying for them in our home, like I'm sure you all have, but everybody else, you don't want this to be you. There's enough dangers around that are apparent, and unapparent dangers are ones you can't avoid, but the apparent ones, now we know we really can't. We shouldn't be sending our kids to school. It's in the catechism. You're the primary educator. The school year begins in September, unless you're a communist anyway. So even if you sent your kids to school, pull them out. And if you don't know how to homeschool them, and if you don't know how to homeschool them, let me do it for you. We have a couple dozen families is what we wanted to get. And it's really all about it, particularly in grammar school and middle school, but also into high school. It's about diagramming sentences. It makes for geniuses. It's age old. It's proven. Do a little bit of math and then teach them Latin. And you can augment this however you want, but I will do those three things for you. Go to timothyjgordon.com. We have a /flash crash sale at the last minute because we start school on Tuesday after Labor Day, the way it's supposed to be, September the 2nd. We just slashed $300 off. So for $600, you get the full semester for as many kids as you have. And that's the thing. Kids are not, you don't need a year by year grade system where they're taught radically different things. They need to get really, really good at a couple things. And that's why it was called grammar school. That's why it's called grammar school, because they get really, really good at grammar by doing it year after year. And that's what I'll teach them. So go to timothyjgordon.com and enroll them there. Do we have other super chats?
Somebody said you should debate the Happy Saturday. It's a debate show today. Just for fun.
Oh, okay. I don't know that one.
No. They're just making a joke that every comment was supposed to be like a debate, and it just says Happy Saturday. So if you want to debate that.
Oh, that's funny. No, have a bad Saturday. No, I wasn't getting it. Is there a debate show called Happy Saturday? What a gay show.
$20. Thank you, Tim and Steph. Very nice.
Thank you. These are so friendly.
MKG again. It says this will be hard to pack in a super chat, but from the zoomed out perspective, the oneness you appeal to reminds me of the simplicity argument of the Muslims. More simple equals more true.
Yeah, well, it's just even the modern philosophers acknowledge that with the even Occam, who's super gay, acknowledges that. The simplest argument is usually the correct one.
He also added another one. He said, Tim, come on. When they said one, they were referring to the one body of the church, not the head. In parentheses, Arius, you have been ejected from the one body.
What? Sorry, could you reread that?
He said, Tim, come on. When they said one, they're referring to the one body of the church, not the head. And in parentheses, Arius, you have been ejected from the one body.
I'm not, I know, I wasn't saying, you misunderstood. I wasn't saying that the one didn't refer to one church. I'm saying that only the church that has a visible sign of unity can avoid your circular rule of faith. Councils are ecumenical when we accept them, and the accepted councils are ecumenical. And what's my proof for that claim? You have 14 churches, at least. There are 14 autocephalous churches. You don't even pretend Orthodox to meet that first mark of the church. And one head is the way to govern one body. So what's the oneness is the mark of church? It refers to the one body, which you said exactly correctly. But one body requires one head. Because one body has multiple members, how do you make them coordinate with the one head? But the oneness, you're absolutely right, refers to the body, not the head. It just implies one head as well.
The J Pine said, sent $40 and said Catholic forever.
Based.
Amen. What do you say to people who say you're going to convert? We get this all the time on the channel. Like, oh, Tim's going to convert to the Orthodoxy.
I mean, I don't, irrespective of, how I perform this time or that time, I've been debating a long time. I mean, I did just listen to these 3 shows on whether or not I would never convert to, after proving beyond any shadow of any doubt that Jesus really meant something ambitious when he gave the keys to Peter. And all of the patristics and, most of the first 7 ecumenical councils reaffirm that it's at least a jurisdictional keys. Why would I do it? After showing what I showed about what the East believed about the Filioque, what position it made them overreact to assuming between 800 and 1285. Why would I become Orthodox after the pure act segment was just pure error on Jay's part? The mistaking passive potency for creaturely active potency for creatorly active potency. It's a double error. And little errors in time have big consequences, and this was not that little an error there. He debated well in the Filioque segment, but I mean, the papacy is the only one you need, and the pure act thing is win over everybody's heads anyway. But trust me, I wasn't wrong on it.
Okay, we have a next one. Jay's all bishops are Peter claim doesn't address the singular pronouns in Matthew 16 and never provided an Orthodox reading of Isaiah 22 single key holder typology, saying, quote, all I need is one contradiction, end quote, is cope.
Yeah. Well, that's that foundationalism, my view, versus coherentism. He thinks that if you disprove anything about Catholicism, everyone's just going to go be Orthodox. And I at the very least, with the timeline, prove that. No, if you disprove this aspect of Catholicism, you're disproving all of Christianity with the 33 ADs thing. And yes, you're actually right. When I brought up Matthew chapter 16, he just said, well, what about Matthew chapter 18? I was like, well, I'm talking about Matthew chapter 16. You're Peter, on this rock, I will build my church. I will give you, singular you, not plural you, the keys. Thank you. And the keys are a prime ministerial office from Isaiah chapter 22. So he had no rebuttal for that, because there is no rebuttal for that, because Jesus gives the keys to singular second person you alone. And there is no rebuttal to that. So you can't rebut it. And Matthew chapter 18, he does some other stuff. Yeah, because the bishops are really important too, which is why you have to read the Relatio of Bishop Gasser at Vatican I. They're really, really, really important. They're like Congress, kind of. There's a president some of the time. We only basically have a president when the bishops start contradicting each other, like the Eastern Orthodox and the Oriental Orthodox did at Chalcedon. Then you need a president to call everything to order. Or like a Supreme Court part of the time, president part of the time, just like a bishop, another one member of Congress other times. More like a prime minister, I guess. I don't know. I haven't thought about the analogies long enough.
Greetings from Ireland. Seat of Wisdom, pray for us. St. Patrick, pray for us. It was $5. Thanks. Thank you so much. Okay. The only truth in our world is the bride of Christ, the Roman Catholic Church. Cindy.
Amen.
Amen to that. Okay, they say the Pope is the Archbishop of the world and first among equals. Could you and Elijah make a list from the early church affirming the papacy so we can ask them to repeat and affirm the list?
A list of what?
I think of all the church or all the popes, the official popes from the early church affirming the papacy. Oh, wait. Tell me if I'm wrong. Wait, they say the Pope is the Archbishop of the world and the first among equals. Can you and Elijah make a list from the early church affirming the papacy so we can ask them to repeat and affirm the list? Oh, maybe popes that we agreed on that first 1,000 years. Is that right?
Sorry, I don't. Could they clarify?
I'm not.
Yeah, just clarify the question. I'll 100% tend to it, but that's a list of what I mean. I put together a list of all the places which are compelling to make you believe that the Pope has a universal jurisdiction in the first, not even 1,000 years, the first 500, 600 years.
The King Theodem of Rohan said, "Beloved Tim, hope off topic school. What's your position on evolution and which are possible?" JD has gone full Evo denial and says can't have Evo and EO, but RC have compatibility. Prosit ex Vindobona. Prosit ex Vindobona.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think it's a dumb issue. I think it's a dumb issue to talk about, and it's a dumb issue to resign yourself to, because not all science is fake. Some science has proven to be quite fake. And Pius XII told us we can believe or not believe in any of it. We can also sort of not commit yourself to a position. I think I'm definitely in the camp strongly of old Earth versus young Earth. But this is one of the things Richard Dawkins does, not even masterfully. It's retarded the way he does it. He always associates old Earth with did someone just throw a pillow in here?
No, I don't think so. Sorry.
He always associates old Earth with evolution, and evolution isn't necessarily linked with old Earth. It's one of the models of old Earth, but I find old Earth much more compelling than young Earth. But I'm kind of macro or micro evolution. Macro evolution seems to have just so many flaws. Micro evolution, not so much so. But it just doesn't matter because it's not required one way or the other and never was. So I'm from a family of scientists, of geologists who study the age of the Earth. So it'd be really hard for me, or I think anybody, to defend things like, spectroscopic dating or even carbon dating, when we use that to so well to prove that something like the shroud's real. So it's like, you don't really want to be selective on, I don't know. I just don't care that much, even though I'm from a family of geologists. I'm not committed either to evolution or not evolution. It's to me, it's a kind of an intellectual turd. Let Protestants and Richard Dawkins, dumbass, sort of four horseman atheists, yell at each other over evolution. It doesn't do anything to my faith, whether it's evolution or not evolution. It does nothing to my faith. Even if it were young Earth, I'd be like, oh, it's kind of cooler if the young Earth thing were true. That's less compelling to me than an older Earth.
Tim loves Aristotle too much to convert to Eastern Orthodoxy.
Yeah, well, and the papacy. And Jesus, really Jesus. I love Jesus too much to convert, because you'd be making him a liar, what he did when he, the handoff of the keys to Peter at 33 AD. You'd be making him a liar if you say you don't need the papacy after he said, in a kind of Isaiah 22 way, you do need to have these keys.
Thank you, Tim. Great showing. Ave Christos Rex.
Thank you.
And then he can followed up the comment from above. Aren't you falling into the Prot mistake of literal exegesis? It says what it means, and it means what it says.
On
the papacy, I guess, the scriptural papacy.
I wouldn't say that's. Yeah, there's just. I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but generally speaking, textualism requires that we take the words, the original public meaning of words, and there are like these. I'm not denying these four levels of scripture that the text always and originally were sort of keyed in. That's the best I can. I would never deny the four senses of scripture, which the Protestants kind of regularly do. So I've never really been confused with Protestants before, so it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And I don't think I'm doing that.
Sorry. Another one. Good debate with Jay. Tim, strongest point was showing how the eternal nature of the energies in the EO worldview shows them to be polytheistic. On another note, Canelo or Crawford in September?
I can't tell if Canelo's slowing down, but I'd like to see him keep going. At one point, you remember this, not long ago, he's been called the best pound for pound boxer in the world. He seems to have slowed down a bit. So, but I want to call Canelo. I'm afraid maybe he's slowed down and Crawford's going to get him, but we'll see. He was good. Even 3.5 years ago. He looked unbeatable. I think Usyk is unbeatable, but there's not really. It was cool because heavyweight boxing was back, like with Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, and their trilogy matches. They're just such a great matchup for each other. Styles make fights, and they were so fun and exciting to watch in those three matches. And then Tyson Fury's just kind of weird, and he always kind of falls off after he wins, and then he loses after he falls off, and so you're kind of like, dang, man. And Anthony Joshua was always a paper tiger. So it's sort of a shame that heavyweight boxing was back felt like a decade, because heavyweight's really the best. And, and Usyk really is good, and there's just no one that can beat him after he beat Tyson Fury so convincingly. Do I have to do the other raffle here?
Not. We can do that live the next show, right?
Yeah. I guess we can do that the next show because it will take a little bit of time. I thought we might sort of clean up here and do it here, but we can do that whatever the next rules for retrograde show is. Anybody else?
I think that's it. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. There is another one. Let's see here. For the notes, LOL. Who's your GOAT boxer? Mine's Julio Cesar Chavez.
Oh wow. Well, I think man, this is a tough one. I would say, Customato Tyson is always he's kind of like he's the GOAT feared. I don't know. You got to throw Lennox Lewis in there. You got to throw Holyfield in there. I don't know how those guys would have matched up against Usyk or Tyson Fury. To me, because I wasn't a boxer, it's harder for me to do. I like to do accurate analysis, and I'm really good at comparing basketball errors because I know the game as a player. But I've often wondered how Holyfield, Lewis, Tyson would in their primes would line up against an Usyk in his prime or a Tyson Fury in his prime, because Tyson Fury is such a good defender. I don't know. And people always want to talk about Muhammad Ali. He had the fastest jab ever, and they always try to say he was there's no one that could ever stand up to him, kind of like he's the MJ. I'll put him in the discussion, but he didn't have a power punch, really. So it's hard for me to get really on board for Muhammad Ali, because I go back and I watch his fights and there's no power punch. It's just it's a stiff jab and a really lightning fast jab, and he owned with it. But I don't know. I would say those 6 guys, they kind of cover the spread. Hard to say though. Hard to say. I will say this: it has to be heavyweight. Heavyweights are, the harder hitters. Boxing's about hitting hard. It's also about defense. It's also about style. But it's not just about how many times do you hit the other guy, or else Computron would be, or CompuBox, whatever it is, would be the thing. It's how many times you hit a guy hard. And so you got to be talking power hitters. And to be talking power hitters, you got to be talking heavyweights.
Another super chat. This was from the person earlier that was, I think, comparing you to the Protestants on that one issue. But he said, all in all, it was fun to watch. You two are a great dynamic duo. I would pay to see the buddy cop movie of you and Jay. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear him affirm it a little bit more. He does off screen, but it wouldn't hurt to affirm it. I don't, because I'm a friendly guy. I mean, everyone agrees I'm a friendly guy in person. And we do get along, and it's nice to hang out with someone your same age. I have a lot of friends that are younger than me. But then you get middle-aged and you start feeling kind of lame when all your friends are younger than you. And it's like, oh man, what's your, how's your prostate doing? Like Dave Bragazzi, just fellow kids. Like, what are we, like, just hanging out? Yeah. There's some things, it doesn't matter how intellectually close you are if you just don't have the same lived experience. So, it's fun hanging out with someone that's closer to my age. Jay's a little older than me. And I have other friends my age, but a lot of my closest friends now are younger, and so it's fun hanging out. But he should talk more positively. Whatever. I do the buddy cop movie. I do the 2-on-2 debate with an atheist or a feminist with him, and I do like him and his wife. We're good with them. Yeah, we're totally good with them. And I think they're good with us. It's fun. You gotta affirm it some. Gotta grasp it with both hands. And I don't want to be the only one saying we're gonna do a buddy cop thing. You gotta be both parties. But I think it is. Whatever. I like building bridges. People think I like to bomb bridges, but I like to build them. It's just tough because the religious online space, the Christian online space, is really weird most of the time. And a lot of the people are weird. And Jay's a cool guy, and I like a lot of his work. And besides the Christian stuff, and so You just like got on just a couple of, was it a week ago? You got on the phone with Trent Horn for a little while too. So
that was nice like 3 days ago.
Oh, that was 3 days ago. That seems like so long ago. Yeah. So it's good to bury hatchets and move forward and build bridges back up.
Yeah. So thanks. We like them. What else? Anything?
I think that's it, sir.
All right, cool. Well, God bless you guys. Have a happy Saturday. Enjoy your Labor Day. I don't know what you do then. Go do some labor or whatever. Isn't it some communist thing?
Has to be.
Who cares? But you don't have to go to school then. And sign up for the homeschool. Pull your kids out of. I'm telling you, I never give prudential advice to other men running their households, but pull your kids out of school. Send them to homeschool. If you don't know how to do it, well, I got you covered. I'm doing this co-op where I'm basically teaching out of my classroom. All you need is a laptop and some notes, some paper and pencil for your kid. And we're doing it from 9 to 11:45, Monday through Friday, starting on Tuesday. It's going to be cool. Sentence diagramming, Latin, math. God bless you all. Deus Vult.